Welcome to Learn About Law. My name is Kevin O'Flaherty from O'Flaherty Law. Today we're going to talk about the Supreme Court's recent ruling on President Trump's executive order banning travel from certain countries and certain refugees from entering the United States. So a little bit of background on this. In the initial travel ban, President Trump's executive order prevented for 90 days residents of several different countries from entering the U.S. Those countries were Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. It also prevented for 120 days after the issuance of the order refugees from entering the U.S. Now, this initial ban was basically held up in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. There was an injunction that prevented it from going into effect. So President Trump went back to the drawing board and made a revised version of the travel ban, and basically the changes that he made were removing Iraq from the list of banned countries, so all the rest of the countries are still in there, and carving out an explicit exception for green card holders and dual citizens. So the travel ban would not apply to green card holders and dual citizens, but other than those two changes, the travel ban was essentially the same. Went back through the courts, and it got challenged in Hawaii and Maryland, the district courts in those states, and then went up through the Ninth Circuit for Hawaii and the Fourth Circuit for Maryland. And basically the Ninth and Fourth Circuits, for different reasons, ordered preliminary injunctions preventing the ban from going into effect. And what the preliminary injunctions do is they basically temporarily, until a hearing can be held on the merits of the case, temporarily enjoin and prevent the ban from going into effect. So they're not a final ruling, but the Ninth Circuit and Fourth Circuit, in upholding the lower court's injunctions, basically said, we think it's likely that President Trump is going to, President Trump's going to lose his argument for the travel ban, and that it would be more harmful to allow it to go forward than to prevent it from going forward while arguments are being heard. So now President Trump appealed to the Supreme Court of the United States from the Ninth and the Fourth Circuits, and the Supreme Court heard the case. So he's asking to have the injunction lifted and have the case heard until the case can be heard on its merits. So the Supreme Court did a couple of things. First, they consolidated the Ninth and Fourth Circuit cases into one case. So basically, we don't have a bunch of different travel ban cases going on. It's just one case now before the Supreme Court. They agreed to hear the case, which is important. So that means there's going to be a ruling on the merits. And this hearing is going to be in October of 2017. And they also partially lifted the preliminary injunction on the travel ban. And this is the important part. So this injunction prevented the travel ban from going into effect as to all of the affected residents of these countries and all affected refugees. By lifting partially the preliminary injunction, the ban will go into effect with certain exceptions. And the exception that the Supreme Court laid out was the ban will still be, or the injunction will still be in effect, preventing the ban from being effective as to residents of these countries or refugees who have a bona fide relationship with the United States. So any refugees or residents of the 6 countries that are listed in the travel ban that don't have a bona fide relationship with the United States are now prevented for 90 days for people from these 6 countries, 120 days for refugees generally from entering the United States. So again, there's this exception. People with a bona fide relationship with the United States, the ban won't apply to. So what is a bona fide relationship? Basically, this comes down to a couple things. One is if you've got family in the United States, the ban won't apply to you. If you have been accepted to a university in the United States, so if you're going to the United States for schooling, the ban won't apply to you. And the third is that if you've got a job that you've accepted in the United States, the ban won't apply to you. So people from even these 6 banned countries can get into the United States despite the travel ban if they have family, a job, or education that they're undertaking in the United States. That's what a bona fide relationship is. But the ban now, within 72 hours of June 26th, 2017, when this ruling came down, within 72 hours of that date, the ban's going to go into effect as to everyone else from those 6 countries that are listed in the executive order, and as to all refugees. Now, the important thing to understand is that the executive order only lasts for 90 days as to people from these 6 countries and 120 days as to refugees. So even though the Supreme Court didn't issue a ruling on the merits of whether the executive ban should be allowed to go into effect, simply by lifting the preliminary injunction, at least the ban as it relates to the 6 countries, since it's only 90 days long, will basically be fully effective, because the court won't actually hold hearings on this until October, which is more than 90 days away from the time that the ban goes into effect. So basically, even though they're just lifting a preliminary injunction and holding hearings on the merits at a later date, they're essentially allowing the ban to run its course by lifting the preliminary injunction. And the reasoning for doing that is twofold. One is that they think that Trump is likely to be successful on the merits at the hearing, and 2 is that they feel like the national security interests outweigh the burden of allowing this ban to go into effect. So the bottom line is that we're going to get a final answer on this in October, but even though usually lifting a preliminary injunction isn't the final word on the subject, the Supreme Court has basically allowed this ban to go into effect with certain exceptions. Now, the dissenting opinion on this basically said that carving out this exception for bona fide citizens isn't a good idea, because it's going to put a lot of burden on the system for individual agencies to determine what constitutes a bona fide relationship to the United States. So, now we've got a big gray area there that people are going to have to figure out on a case-by-case basis. Does this person, if they're coming from one of these 6 banned countries, have a bona fide relationship with the United States? So that's one of the institutional problems that this may cause. But stay tuned. We'll see how this plays out as it goes into effect across the various agencies that have to execute it. And we'll get a final ruling on this in the fall session of the Supreme Court 2017. So thanks so much for listening. If you have any questions, please leave them in our comments section. You can also call our office if you want an initial consultation in almost every area of law. We do immigration law, but we have experts in nearly every area. Our phone number is 630-324-6666. That's 630-324-6666. You can go to learn-about-law.com for more of our videos, podcasts, and articles about the law. SeizeYourBusiness.com is our business podcast and video blog. And MakingRealEstateFun.com is our podcast and video blog about real estate. Thanks so much for listening.